Hey, Shiva, how are you? Welcome, everybody. We are going to have a big group, I have a feeling, today.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. And Carl's here. Carl.
What's up, Andrew?
Good morning. Hey. So did you see the Log4j dashboard in there?
I have heard about it, and I know my team has looked at it. Which, by the way, is such a cool response, to have something ready to go,
Absolutely. We did it for you only. You didn't catch me on that. Good morning, everybody.
I was involved in another chat around other organizations unnamed that did not provide such helpful information, and CyberCNS was noted as being more helpful.
I don't want to, on this live chat, want to guess who that might be, Carl, but I have a suspicion, okay? Welcome. Hey, Steve, how are you? Doing any stun flying there?
Sunday did quite a bit. It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very
Hey, do you
cool.
see AWS or somebody's down again?
Yeah, well, we're seeing an IT glue outage this morning. We think it's related.
Yeah, it's big. I was just trying to get one place and check down detector, and there were about 10 places spiking, and then 5 minutes later it was across the board.
Jeez. Do you think
I was going
to say, do you think it has anything to do with that, Steve, if you had a guess?
It's pretty widespread, and I think it's probably more like a Cloudflare or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna profess to know the answer to that one.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Wow, we're already at 3 past. And usually I tell everybody at the top of the hour, we wait till 3 past, but it's already here. All right. So welcome, everybody. And I'm sure we're going to have more popping in here as I'm looking at the participants. If this is your first time to the partner call, welcome. I'm Andrew Morgan, and I help Shiva and the CyberCNS team on go-to-market. And just to kind of give you a little bit of the agenda today. First of all, we are a fun group, and we want you to enjoy today. Shiva will come on momentarily, our CTO and co-founder, and go over what's new. We do that every time, what's new and what's coming. The big things that are obviously underway are this Log4j dashboard and the one-time assessment. And I'm sure he has some other goodies that he'll talk about. I'll manage chat and watch that. Keep your questions coming through there. If I don't interrupt him right away, don't think I won't get to your questions, and we'll open it up. Carl, I do know at some point we want to have a conversation, maybe 3/4 or midway through. Gotten a lot of questions around go-to-market. So I was wondering if, we open that up for discussion. How are you selling it? How are you packaging it? So I think, let's see if my good friend Larry's on here. And there was another gentleman that I was going back and forth with this morning. I apologize, sir, if you could remember your name, or I'll go back to my email, but been getting several questions on go-to-market. So that's what we do in the second half, is, just open it up for general discussion if we have topics that people want to discuss, which is a very good one on go-to-market. So Shiva, let you take on over here we're up to 75, which is a very good, respectable number. I'm very excited about that. And again, welcome everybody. Shiv, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, of course.
So I'm just going to quickly share my desktop.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to turn off my video, but I'll be managing chat in the background here. Okay. Floor is yours, Shiva. We can see you just fine.
Yep. So what did we basically do the last couple of weeks? First is one of the major releases is what I would call as a beta release, more than an alpha, but I still don't want to call it the prime release, but a good beta release of the assessments. I think I saw a few tickets coming through from various folks who tried assessments. For some people, it seems the scan was not completing, and for a couple of other people, they got the reports, etc., and they were wondering about the pagination, etc. So we've taken a look at all of those pieces, and we'll be releasing fixes around those pieces very quickly. The second thing, which basically we were not ready for, and I think nobody was ready for, was essentially the bombshell that got thrown on Friday, which was basically the Log4 shell. So the first thing that we essentially did, so as most of you know, 90% of our code basically is in Golang and in Python. We basically have dependencies on Java primarily in two places. One essentially is Keycloak, which basically is the authentication piece. And the second one is Elasticsearch, open distro. So both of these systems basically were patched. So the good part about it was that Keycloak basically uses the logger interface in Java. So we just had already earlier replaced it with a different implementation, a different logger implementation, which was not using log4j. So we were safe on the Keycloak side, but we still had vulnerability from the open distro side, which there were two ways about going about fixing that vulnerability. One is essentially to take the log4j 2.15.0 release, which did nothing except for the fact that it disabled J&A lookups, right? So the same thing can be achieved using a command line parameter, which essentially can be encoded in what is called a JVM.options in Elasticsearch. So if you look at the mail that I sent out, it essentially does that, puts it into the JVM options and restarts Elasticsearch and makes it not vulnerable. So you will not basically get any J&A lookups. So a more aggressive patch that is getting basically released today is essentially a patch which essentially removes, introduces 2.15.0, but along with releasing 2.15.0, it also removes the J&A lookup class from the jar file so that it can never be used going forward. So that's essentially the patch that we're also rolling out today so that everybody can feel safe and compliant, that it won't get misused in future, etc. So that was basically what we did when we got this, and this was rolled out on Friday. Like as soon as we got to know, within a couple of hours, we were able to roll it out to all the instances. And for anybody whose instance we could not reach, we already gave the instructions over email as to how to look at it. The second thing was that we worked on basically while
this is a demonstration of the new Log4j feature that we have added to CyberCNS. CyberCNS provides a new widget showing machines with vulnerabilities. I have not run a scan, so there are no entries here. I am going to run one-time scans, but the same holds for a probe or a lightweight agent.
So here is a Windows machine that I have taken the command and run a scan. Now this is a machine where we have disabled J and DI lookups using the Java command line parameter. So you see that although I have a vulnerable version, it shows as not vulnerable as we have a mitigation.
Here is another Windows machine where I have not applied the mitigation. So for the same version, you will see that it is vulnerable. Also, please note it gives you the exact paths that are vulnerable.
By the way, Shiva, while they're watching, I just want to let you know, Tim Fournette and I are going to do one today like this. That's a little bit easier to understand. And we'll post it out on LinkedIn.
It works on Linux. Here is a scan on a Linux machine, and here you can see the vulnerability show up on the dashboard. CVE 2021-44228 is the new CVSS Score 10 vulnerability that allows remote takeover by entering specific strings to be logged that invokes an unauthenticated JNDI interface.
We hope this helps you find and patch machines with a vulnerability.
So we actually got a couple of things which we basically incorporated today and will be pushed forward. One was essentially, apparently, the way SAP uses Tomcat, we are not able to see the. So we are not able to see, for example, this particular jar file being utilized. So that is one thing that we basically are fixing. But apart from that, most of the other cases we basically have handled. So whether you're running any web server, whether you're running a Java application using something like JBoss, etc., this basically figures it out and basically gives you the vulnerabilities. The next one is basically, we released the assessment wizard, and one of the things that we immediately got back basically was the fact that if you are in an SSO login, you basically cannot provide details. So if you have an SSO login, then you can basically have the ability to create a client ID and client secret. So you can essentially, you have to just get the client ID, client secret and provide it one time. And then you can essentially start using the assessment wizard. You don't need to basically log in repeatedly over there. So that's basically that part of the assessment wizard, so that anybody, irrespective of whether you are you're logging in using Office 365 or any of those pieces, or you're using a local user, you can essentially use the assessment wizard. So that has been resolved. And then we basically have the complete status, like we can basically look at Active Directory, the Active Directory completely, bring back data from Active Directory, and also we provide continuous status updates on the scan in progress and scan completion timelines. So the third thing, which essentially is in QA, basically got rejected 3 times and basically has come back, is basically the vulnerability patch timeline, which Chris and others have been asking for. Snooze X days before any vulnerability shows up in reports dashboards. The problem why it basically keeps coming back at us is because everything was based on the date of the patch release. However, Microsoft patches and the date on which basically the vulnerability is released, these two essentially are different dates. And so what happens is we are having a whole bunch of bugs that crop up because those dates don't match up. And so those vulnerabilities kind of tend to show up, or they tend to show up late. So we are kind of working through that problem to make sure that it is basically in there. Now, the only question that like we're wanting to get opinion on the group is that, say that today is Patch Tuesday, right? If we give you the ability, like if you go to a customer and you tell him that everything is okay, which is what I think is the intent, and then we basically, for whatever reason, somebody else basically comes in on a couple of days later and shows them a report which says you have all these vulnerabilities, and basically puts a doubt in the person's mind, saying that your current service provider is not doing this, then it sets a bad precedent. So question is that, should we handle this a little bit differently, where we essentially keep these vulnerabilities, but what we essentially say is that we have a separate column which says that, is it within SLA or outside of SLA, and you define that SLA timeline. And we essentially mark these as basically it is within the SLA. And so basically patching will take place within the next X number of days. And that way what happens is, by adding that information with the vulnerability, it also becomes easy for you to explain, saying that this came from a Patch Tuesday, rather than us suppressing it and not showing it. And after that, we basically going around trying to basically explain this whole thing out. Now, I think that's something that I want you guys to chime in terms of saying whether this is the right thing to do or not, because my developers were having very heated debates about this, and there were a lot of opinions over there. Both sides basically arguing very differently, but I think it's something that we need to do right, because otherwise, like, my biggest worry is that with all of you, like a few of you may like it one way, the other may not like it the same way. And then we'll get into a problem of how to basically get this together. So, and then we basically, if you, when you're generating reports, we'll essentially give you an ability to switch on or switch off anything which is not in SLA or anything which is in SLA. So that way, what happens is that if you want to generate a report without them, they will get generated without them. But then we'll also try to put basically saying that this covers only things which are within the SLA and not outside of the SLA. So that is basically what we were thinking about. So your opinion, basically based on that, we will essentially complete this week. Now, basically, there was one of the requests from multiple partners which said that we want to be able to upload multiple subnets and static IPs. They have 40 to 50, and that bulk upload is basically coming in here. And the last thing that is in QA is basically the compliance piece, where we have essentially compliance, Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, and NIST 800-171. In fact, in the current release itself, quite a few improvements in terms of all the CIS, and we removed all the unnecessary controls like CIS, CSC, etc. So all of that you will actually see in the current build already. And finally, what we're doing in development now is basically we have, so as I explained to you last time, we built this new probe in a little bit of a very different fashion, right? The assessment agent is very different from what we had with the earlier probe and the lightweight agent. Significant changes that we are making, which basically is based on feedback that you've given us. First is, as I was explaining, when this new agent goes in, it does a scan and then it maintains state. So which means that it is basically looking only for changes. Only if changes come, it basically pushes data, otherwise it does not push data. Second, it is much faster because it basically does not push so much of data. Third is it's more efficient in terms of how it fetches the data. Fourth, in terms of the mechanics, etc., although it remains the same, there are certain optimizations we've done in terms of the number of files that get copied over, etc., so that we essentially kind of optimize that. And that again is reducing the amount of data that is being transferred over SMB. So that basically is helping us reduce the amount of time that is used to scan, especially using a probe. Lightweight agents basically are become less noisy. So we basically have optimized the OS queries to make it like very concise, precise to deliver the data that is required and nothing more. The other thing that we've also done with the new agent is also to make it, while it's publishing only changes, it is also basically looking at from a reachability perspective, etc., how it's behaving and better logging. So all of these features basically are coming into the probe and lightweight agent, getting ported back from the new assessment agent to that. So if you folks can try the assessment agent, even if you try it locally with a couple of sales folks, etc., and then say get the feedback, that will be great, because then we can essentially, the same thing is going to get rolled back into the probe and the lightweight agent. The next thing that's going to happen is basically we're going to migrate into the new serverless architecture. It's been undergoing testing, load testing for the past 4 weeks. And we believe that this will basically kind of help us also scale in the future. Second is we're basically making it multi-region. So any one region outage does not basically take you out. So you continue to function and basically there is no issues with that. The third is basically we're focusing right now heavily on, we believe that with Windows, Linux, and these machines, we have a good amount of data that's coming in. The area where we find ourselves, I think, very severely lacking is basically other network devices, where we want to essentially focus and basically bring that up to on par with all the other devices, at least to the extent where we can identify this is this type of device and these are the characteristics, this is the software, and this is basically present in this part of the network. So we want to be able to discover where in the topology it is lying, where it is present, etc. also, rather than just basically throwing an IP address at people. So that's essentially what we're working on. And so we want to get stronger on the network device end primarily. and then build out more. We are building out more widgets for report builder. This is a team that's building out more network widgets. So they are building out widgets for compliance, for all of the other pieces, so that you can build your own reports. And we are heavily basically working on revamping the Linux scans, because currently the scans, Linux scans, have two big drawbacks that we basically did a review of. First is, every time we basically have to do a scan, there is a whole bunch of data in the terms of OVL files that are getting downloaded. And that is not efficient, because especially when we are scanning like hundreds of machines, transferring OVL files of this size to those machines is not an efficient way. So we're kind of revamping the entire Linux scan to basically make it more efficient and error-free. So that's what development is working on right now. And this will basically get out of the development cycle into QA this week, and then onto your machines very shortly after that. So that's basically what we've been working on, and this is essentially the roundup of what we've been kind of working on the last couple of weeks.
Not much going on there, Shiva. We can see you guys are taking it easy, feet up as usual. Wow. Okay, Shiva, you want to start on, let me just ask like real quick, let's start with, because you started with Log4j, then I want to go to the patching. When I said, sorry, with the holding back the patches. Let me just ask real quick, just give me a yes, we're good. Like yeses, we're good. Log4j, are you guys all good with that? Just a quick why for yes. And what I'm trying to do here is jump to the part where, okay, that's what I figured. Okay, Tim, maybe I'll start off with you, and then we can segue into the delay in the patching and the challenges Shiva's having and how to approach that. So Tim, can you come on?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So a couple quick questions. One is, and I might have missed it, are you doing the external check on Log4j?
We have incorporated that, Tim. So we've incorporated, that's getting released tomorrow, where basically we are kind of doing the incorporating this into the, so that's basically using the callback method. So it's basically not looking at any process, etc., but just trying to do the attack itself and figure out. So that's basically the callback method. So we are putting that into the external scanner tomorrow.
Okay.
So they'll be able to put it in the string and just pop, point it at any external server.
Yes.
Is that okay? Cool.
And I guess you're going to just point it at one of your servers just to see if it bounces back.
Yes.
Okay. So next question is, are you going to do that on the internal scans as well? I'm thinking about, just like you mentioned a minute ago, with network devices, IoT devices that are on the network that we can't do an internal scan for. That might be a good scan to run.
My only worry is that, like, if people start seeing it as an attack, then especially on internal, that's the biggest worry I have, because then it becomes a support nightmare, because everybody comes back and says it's not working, and then we figure out like somebody has put some EDR rules, etc., to stop this from happening. So
yeah, I mean, maybe limit it to just the devices that don't have a lightweight agent or an agent.
okay.
And that would also most likely limit any kind of EDR from seeing it. And that way we can check against any IoT devices on the network. That's one of my biggest worries is, say we have a wireless doorbell or something that's vulnerable.
Got it, Tim. So for us, it's not a problem, because the code base for the external scan and the internal scan is the same. It's only that what switches get turn it on. So basically the code is already in there. It's only a question of like, if you want to turn it on the internal network devices, we can turn it on. I'll basically get that in tomorrow's build.
Sounds good.
Tim, do you have feelings or let me just see, Michael Bradshaw, is your question about the Log4j piece, bud? Before we go to patching.
Yeah, it is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're obviously in the trial phase with CyberCNS at the moment, and we're just scanning internally and externally, and we're not
Okay.
getting any hits on this. Now,
Okay.
as I understand it, the external one's not being done until tomorrow. But we're also not seeing any hits against like some of the V centers that we have. I'm guessing that's because they're excluded as well. Is that right?
Shiva, can you speak to that on vCenter?
For your vCenter, have you given the credentials into the system? If yes, then it is
Yes, believe so. Yeah.
Because
uh,
vCenter is one of the really heavy is one of the real vulnerable ones, right, Michael? That's probably your concern, right?
Yeah, because we know we haven't patched some customers' environments, so I'm surprised I'm not seeing it because I'm seeing other vulnerabilities from the past, for instance.
Got it. Shiva, should we have maybe the team work directly? Is Vishali on? Maybe we could have the team work directly with Michael on that and figure
Yes.
out why we're not seeing that.
yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that offline. I was just wondering if there was anything in particular that you guys could think of.
No, glad you brought it up. Can you just Vishali, can you work with Michael on that vCenter piece? Is she on, Shiva?
I can log it with support if that's easier, guys. Also.
No, I will take care of it. So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Shiva. Okay, then bear with me, guys. I see a lot of things. Dennis, you want to come on LDAP and Log4j callbacks?
I was just curious if it was only looking for an LDAP server, because if you attended the session with the guys from Black Hills, Log4j can actually call out to make out several other queries. So far, 90% of them have been LDAP, but I think that's just because the LDAP is much easier to set up. So there are some other ways it can call out, including DNS. I just wonder if that's going to be on the plan, on the roadmap at some point to look, because I think what will happen over time is the bad guys will switch to other
They already are.
other download queries.
Yeah, in fact, there's already, I'll put Ryan Weeks put up an article. They already are changing attack methods, but sorry, Shiva, go ahead.
yeah, so Dennis, the reason for why we're just simply using LDAP, as you said, is basically because it's the easiest to set up, but it also tells us whether it's vulnerable or not vulnerable, right? So that once we know it's vulnerable, then we know that we have to patch that server. Now, how it can be used in an attack, yes, you're right. In terms of DNS, the problem is that with DNS, we don't have control over the DNS resolution hierarchy. So I can't change the DNS server on the machine. So it may not come and hit my DNS server. That's the only problem that we had with choosing DNS as a vector to basically determine whether it's vulnerable.
Well, actually, you make a really good point. All you really want to know is whether it's vulnerable or not, and basically using LDAP will tell you that.
Okay. All right, bear with me. So Dennis, Mark, do you have anything you want to mention about PowerShoot?
No, I wasn't getting any hits either, so I just cheated and installed PowerShoot on the workstation and then let it scan, and then it popped up in my results. So it was an easy honeypot to stand up so I could validate it was working.
Very cool. Very cool. Steve Pollack, probe scan. You want to come on about?
Yeah. So you were earlier, we were scanning for anything on the network, but then someone said, there should have said it's not scanning IoT. How does it ignore? Is it limited to just PCs, Linux, and PCs and Linux, or Apple? Is it scanning every port or every system for that?
It's scanning every port and system, but the technique of identifying basically which instance is basically vulnerable is not by basically doing the exploit itself, but by essentially trying to, so technically, if you look at it, right, what is the Log4j vulnerability? It is basically like if you have a web page, I am essentially entering something into that web page, which then is basically used by the backend to log something. And when that log is basically logged, that's when essentially this whole thing gets activated. So the point is that first we have to figure out like whether which form field, you basically have to be a hit and trial whether there's a form field, and how do you basically enter this piece of like JNDI lookup code in there, and then basically submit the form so that it basically logs, and then it becomes a hit and miss. So what we had done initially is to basically make something more deterministic, which is on the machines that where we are, we essentially figured out what are the Java processes, and then figure out like whether log4j is being used as part of the class path. And if it is being used, with what command line arguments and environment variables that are there. And based on that, it essentially determines whether you're running a vulnerable version. And if you're running a vulnerable version, do you have the mitigation in place or not? And then it essentially kind of marks it as vulnerable or not vulnerable. So that's basically phase one that we've done. Phase two, which we're releasing tomorrow, is more of like simulating an attack, right? So you're actually trying to get into a web page, try to basically kind of enter the data, make the server log it using log4j, and then see whether it basically makes a remote call based on the field that you're given there. So that is basically the phase two thing. The phase two part of it is going to be a little bit more painful, because it has to figure out which page to basically put data into. And that's where it will take some time. But at least the first step was to basically identify any applications that you have on your Windows machines, etc., which have this vulnerable version of log4j.
All right, I was unclear. I thought it was scanning the network, but it is identifying the machines, and I agree that phase two could produce some interesting results.
So Shiva, on just switching gears real quick, Colin asks about VSA, Kaseya, and lightweight agent. Those in the do we? Tim, I'm going to ask Tim. Tim, we don't have VSA script in GitHub, do we?
I don't think so. I can double check.
I just checked. I didn't see any, but yeah, Colin, we have a GitHub, but I don't think we have VSA, a script for VSA. Shiva, any thoughts on VSA scripting for lightweight agent?
Have it, Andrew. The only thing is that we need one VSA account to finish the testing, because because everything is ready, one test and I can release it. The only problem is I don't have that this thing to release it.
Yeah, Colin, is there any chance do you have a test instance or anything that we could work with you guys on, or some, I don't know, some kind of testing?
Yeah, for sure. We can definitely work with you guys on that.
That'd be awesome. We have a few people asking, I know, about it. Shiva, how do you want to do that? Again, do you want to take that directly, or Vishali?
Yeah, I'll get somebody in the team to reach out with Colin, and we will basically, Colin, all we need is basically one test account with access to one dummy company. We don't need anything else, because we're just going to put the script in the script editor and essentially deploy it to a local machine over here. Beyond that, we'll not be doing anything. Once that is done, you can delete our accounts and we won't be using it again. So that way, what will happen is that at least we can give it to people who want to use VSA for deployment of lightweight agents as well as probes.
That's
perfect. Sounds good. Thank you guys.
Cool. Thanks, Colin. Colin, just so I'm going to put my email in here. I really want to make sure we get you connected. I know Shiva's got a lot on his plate. Just shoot me your email and maybe make it hey for VSA testing.
Sure thing. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So I know we're burning time here. We haven't gotten much. D Reynolds, how does EDR interact with Log4j in performing vulnerability scans? Are we going to get to? So Shiva, basically, what about intercept X? I guess D Reynolds? Are you just asking? Do you need to whitelist? Because we will get some EDRs will see us as a vulnerability or as an attack vector. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that as I do scan, or as we're continuously scanning, yeah, maybe making sure that our EDR plays nice with Log4j. or that it detects it, I should say. And same with intercept X. Make sure that it is known about that, if that makes sense.
I think so. Shiva, any comments there?
No, I agree with you. You'll have to whitelist CyberCNS, but Log4j will get identified. And if you basically have a mitigation in place, yes, I don't see it, then I'll basically say that it's mitigated. But if there is any machine which essentially has Log4j in it, it'll anyway give you the report of that Log4j being present on that machine and being used actively.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Okay. Bear with me, guys. Ali, which version? Do you mean CyberCNS?
Yeah, correct. On CyberCNS, because he mentioned that there's a new version they're going to release tomorrow. So I was wondering, is there a way we can check which version we're on?
Got it. Well, I do know you're on the latest version. Shiva, do you want to talk about how the updates are pushed? Ali, I'm almost 100% sure you're SaaS too.
Yeah.
Right. So Shiva, do you want to just talk about how those are pushed if you're a SaaS partner?
Yeah. So Ali, for SaaS partners, essentially we have like our repository where basically we have the latest code, which is called Artifactory. And then essentially all of the instances pull on us giving a command. It pulls the latest patch and basically it gets updated. The same holds good for on-prem devices too. So you are constantly up to date with the latest version. So only in the case of on-prem, in case your Salt minion is down, it will basically not be able to update the patch. But for that too, if you basically go out to the UI, you can essentially look at the build versions and you can basically see if there's a newer version, you can essentially update it manually too.
Okay. Do the probes get updated automatically, or we need to force that?
No, they get updated automatically.
Okay, thank you.
Shiva, by the way, G Law made a comment that he has, it looks like successfully created a Kaseya script. Do you want to compare that potentially?
We'll be happy to.
Okay. I'll, again, if you could send that to my email, you'll see it below, right below yours. I can get it and we can get eventually like this. So we'll test it and then get it into our GitHub. That would be fantastic. Okay, I'm going to switch gears. Shiva, can you go over the patch? Yeah, Steve, I have a comment on patch delay. All right, so Steve, why don't you start us off and we'll get right on into the patch delay notification.
All right, so last week it was clear that people want to delay the patches, and I immediately just thought that's not a good idea for the delay. We want to see it when a patch comes in, a vulnerability is notified. We want our customers to know that the new vulnerability is there. We want to be able to say we're working on this. What would be interesting is, I don't know if it's possible, in the remediation plan to put the date of the patch release on the remediation page. That's one. And two, is there a way to show in the number of computers affected an up or down arrow indicating that the trend is down? So for instance, new patch comes out for Windows 10 and there's 100 machines and a client that need to be updated. The patch management system is going to go and patch those systems over time. So this week it's 100. Next time I scan, it's 92, then 65, then 42, then 23, downtrend. Is there any way that we could see that on that remediation page? Then you can tell the client, hey, look, it's moving down. You're never going to get clean. You're never going to have a clean vulnerability scan because there's going to be a new one coming out from either a third party or Microsoft.
Steve, I think that's basically a brilliant idea, actually. If I basically tie down a remediation plan ID to the assets, which basically the count of assets, which basically are affected by that particular patch, which is basically the remediation plan ID, and I draw a graph of it, then it basically kind of will show actually a lot of things. One is basically that you're doing well. Second is everybody doing what they're supposed to do in terms of mitigating those patches? So I think what you brought up is brilliant. I'll basically get that implemented.
Well, then, thank you.
I think Steve, you can leave. If you remember Seinfeld, this is like a George moment. You're good for the day.
I'm good. See ya.
All right.
Oh, I had one more.
Good.
No, the other question I had while I'm on is there a way to convert a lightweight agent to a probe from the dashboard? So let's say you have it, and tell you why. If you have if when subnets, you can't scan a subnet with a lightweight agent or with a probe that's not on all the subnets. You either have to deploy on the subnet to get all the information. You can't get full information. If you have a PC or something that's on that network that maybe isn't really busy, you realize what that is, conference room or something, where you could just convert that to a probe without having to reload the agent. Just to know if that's a wish list, not really whether it's possible. Don't even know if it's necessary.
It is already implemented, Steve. It's still in QA because we were able to convert from lightweight agent to probe, but then somebody tried to convert a probe to a lightweight agent, so we had to block that out. So because what happens is when you convert from a probe to a lightweight agent, because there is also an agent reference that is maintained with each of the assets. So if you convert a probe into a lightweight agent, then you have a whole bunch of orphan assets about which we don't know what to do. So, which is why we'll allow the one-way conversion lightweight agent to probe, but we can't go back.
All right, I want to stay focused
I'm
on
done now.
patching. Okay, Mark Hodges, can you come on? Because you've been very vocal about this topic, so go ahead.
No, and I agree with Steve in the fact that, we still need all the patching to, remediation, but the goal is to keep the reports, because when you set out automatic schedule reports, you can't adjust them unless we have the ability to say, ignore a patch, that's not installed, that's really a week old, because nobody patches in the first week. So, they don't get patched till the weekend at the best. So that's the whole goal is if I'm setting up automatic scheduled reports, then I need a way to make them consistent so that by the time the third week comes around, obviously if they're not patched on the third week, I have a problem. I've missed them and machines are offline and they should trigger, but we just need the way to, I'm not going to go in and adjust every goddamn report for every client every week, because that's just silly. I want to be able to just push these reports out to those executives that, want to see them, whether they really read them or not, but they look at them, they take a quick glance, they see all hell broke loose on a Wednesday, and then you have to explain to them, well, patches just came out, and yeah, it's going to look like crap for the first couple weeks, expect that, and then it'll get better. And they don't like them looking like crap. So that's really why I want to see on the reporting side. I don't care about on the actual patching and remediation side. I think they need to be, triggered. But on the reporting side, we need that ability to ignore, patches.
What do you think of that, Shiva?
So we can do two things, right? One is basically, as I said, we'll put two columns which says that it's an SLA or out of SLA. Second is we'll essentially, I think the biggest thing is the overall score, right? So if you basically have said that we'll not, our SLA is basically like, as you said, 2 weeks, right? So 2 weeks for basically a patch to be applied. Then we will essentially not consider it out of compliance for 2 weeks, and we'll make all the scores basically match that particular rule. So that way what will happen is that your score will not go from A to F immediately, but will essentially, if you don't patch for 2 weeks, that's when it basically goes from A to F. Would that be acceptable? Because if I change the vulnerability views and their ability to see a vulnerability, and what I'm basically not wanting is something which is becomes a technical flaw that people say that you didn't catch this vulnerability when you actually had it. So that's my only worry about it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think just, adjusting it on the report side is really all that we really need. I don't need to, if I'm logging in and I'm looking at vulnerabilities, I'm okay to see things looking like crap because I expect it and I understand the concept at the technical level. So, if I look on Wednesday, I fully expect to see really highly vulnerable. And I want to see that because I want to see, by the next Wednesday, oh, look, we dropped. It's gotten better because, a weekend passed and we did put some test patching. So yeah, just solely on the reporting side.
Cool. Chris Sears, you made a lot of comments in there. You want to give yours real quick? Or not real quick, but do you want to comment at all?
Yeah, just I've been pushing for this from the beginning, primarily not from the reporting angle, but from the remediation side of things. That we have a lot of automated process in place. I don't want to see, alerts right away after Patch Tuesday. It's fine if it can show that, or if it shows that as the default, but having that ability to set a certain number of days, in our case, it would probably be, say, 21 days, that we can suppress those when we're in like the action plan page, so that we can be really targeted at what we're dealing with and not have to sort through all of the noise of things that were more recently released. That's why I want to see it. We send a monthly report to our customers. It's usually sent, I think at like 6 a.m. the first day of the month. And, by then we should have had everything from the previous month mostly buttoned up. So I'm not that concerned about what the customer is getting in a report. It's so that we can be really targeted and not waste our time when we're trying to work on vulnerability management.
Sure.
Yeah, so I agree with that. So basically on the vulnerability management, especially the remediation plan, we are going to be adding like a bunch of columns so that you can essentially download it as a table and as an Excel, which you can slice and dice. You can say in SLA, out of SLA, and basically based on that, you can filter it out. And also basically criticality of a particular patch. So that way, I think this should cover all the requirements that have been placed here.
Could there be a column of, I don't know if this is already there, just how many days old the patch is, and then have that be, that we can filter on that, and then just say filter on, everything less than or greater than 21 days. Is that possible? Because I mean, that would be acceptable from our perspective.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Anybody dying to give more input on this? I do want to just save a little bit of time on go to market. Larry Gray has been incredibly patient on this subject. So Carl, you still with us, by the way?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right. Larry, do you have audio?
Can you hear me?
I can. Hey, awesome. Why don't you kick things off? There's been several people that have asked about, again, I feel it's like 2006. How do you sell RMM? How do you sell services? Exactly. Right. So kick it off, Larry. Exactly. Let's get some opinions on this. It'd be great.
It's like the first question I asked somebody in 2005, 6. Just try to understand from our standpoint, our vision of this initially is just a vulnerability reporting service that we provide on a monthly basis. And we're just trying to get the idea of, how people are costing it and pricing it. What are the things that they're considering in terms of, obviously there's the CyberCNS cost, but in terms of hours, per report, per device, or whatever that they're factoring into that.
Yeah. So Carl, you take it from a spectrum, everything from an assessment, how you won't engage with a I consider there's ends of the spectrum. So I'm going to give you guys, I would say a fairly mature end of the spectrum, someone that doesn't ever do free anything, how they have set up on costs on if they're going to do vulnerability. Can you kind of take us through your perspective, Carl? And then I'd love to get others that may have already gone to market.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, there's many different angles to what CyberCNS can do, and so I find it finding its way into many different things. So at the most basic level, initially I wanted something for assessments, and then it developed into ongoing assessments. And so whenever we sell assessments, we are including the CyberCNS as part of our costing of that. So if we do an assessment, CyberCNS is simply a tool, one of the tools that we'll use for scanning, and it's one of the major ones that we'll use. And so to that end, we view that as compensating for the cost and also allowing us to do better assessments than what we were doing before, and our cost is much better. So it's just part of our assessment process. We've also taken pieces of it and made it part of our managed service practice without specifically charging for it in certain areas. For instance, we like to do a review of our firewalls, and we like to do a review of our like the external scans for customers. These are things that we had just built into our managed service offering before, and now CyberCNS does it for us better and easier. We were literally doing manual firewall reviews, and CyberCNS has helped us with the process of doing that with automation. So it's just saving us time. That's part of how we monetize that. Now, when it comes to the vulnerability management cell aspect, which is just one of the many ways that we see this as, you know, folding into our offering, we've gone to market with selling access to the software itself with no remediation whatsoever, and we're pricing that at $300 a month. Which is, you know, very competitive in that space for what the thing can do. And so, you know, in a co-managed sale deal, we might even be doing IT services for them, but their IT team is going to take and do whatever remediation they want to do. And we provide no services. We might help them with a setup project where we charge for it at our, you know, our normal hourly rates for this kind of service, which we're putting at $190 an hour. And after it's set up and running, though, if they ask us any question, basically, then it's just kind of ad hoc stuff that we bill for, and we don't have to do a lot of that. The other piece is if they want us to not only sell them a tool that they can use for internal reporting, but they want us to begin to manage their vulnerability, then we sell a couple of different offerings that we use CyberCNS for. For existing managed service customers, we sell an audit schedule and calendar that has daily, monthly, quarterly, and annual different audits and scans that we do. And we sell a block of hours for that, that's on top of the managed service deal, or could be sold separately. The other piece is like we ask them what level of remediation that they want. Mostly we've talked to people about maybe just handling criticals immediately and letting the rest kind of just be ad hoc projects that we do in the future. We haven't done a lot of guaranteeing that they're going to get a certain amount of like vulnerabilities remediated or anything. We've done specifically more like you will spend X amount of time on it and it will cost you X amount. So that's how that's kind of developed for us. We like to mix it into a regular auditing schedule that we are already selling customers. And then the remediation stuff oftentimes breaks itself out into different projects that are sold on top as well. I know that's kind of a complicated answer, but the product is actually serving us in many, many ways, and we've been able to monetize it multiple times over because of that.
Larry, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, of course. It's like back in 2005, any information helps.
Come to Write a Boom. We'll have a whole Carl will lead a session around drinks. All right, Carl?
A whole session.
Yeah, sure.
Andrew, it's Steve Pollack. I can tell you what we're doing, and it's
yeah, of course, love to.
So, you know, we're not Bob and Gary, you know, perfect. They do a lot of things right. Gary Pika and those guys at True Methods, and reducing our offerings is key. So what we've done now, and I've got my final slide deck came in yesterday, and we call CyberCNS expose vulnerability. Everybody's got skeletons in their closet. We are making it mandatory for all of our clients because we don't want to be left hanging. So we make this part of this is now becoming, as we take all of our existing clients, we're not even trying to find new ones right now because there's too much cybersecurity stuff going on. Next year we will be. But we're going to market with this thing saying, you're going to have this in your network, whether you want it or not. If you want us to be your MSP, then you're going to have this. And if we don't have it, we don't know what's vulnerable. This is a key. This is where we start our day. we go in and look, and then go out and mitigate what needs to be mitigated. Hopefully, watching other tools do the job. But I think it's a huge tool from a vulnerability management standpoint, and I think every customer should have it.
If I could just chime in, not only is it about knowing what's vulnerable, but I think it's again incumbent upon us as MSPs to talk about in something that's meaningful to an end customer about what control 1 and control 2 are. In other words, if I don't know what your inventory is, it's pretty hard, right, to protect you. So I think it's all the way back even to that. What are your thoughts?
You're right. It's way more than just vulnerability. It's the asset management. It's Active Directory. It's all the things that it's designed to do. This is the key. This is the key to that. And we're just saying we have it built in as a price to every client based on number of users, and boom, you get it. It's part of it. And if you don't sign up, you don't sign up.
So we automatically include it to every managed client as well. And the key thing though is we're not promising, without additional like ad hoc project work that can come up, we're not promising remediation of vulnerabilities. We use it as a tool to inform us, or as a tool to make us more efficient and active at doing things, or we can execute a project better because of it. So we're doing the same thing. We've I think found other ways to mix it into the monetization conversation as well. We deployed it to every customer and have, well, for a long time. I think the key thing is where it serves us and makes us more efficient, we just use it for that function. The thing could do so many different things. And I think you have to be careful about what you promise when you say we're vulnerability scanning everything and know all these vulnerabilities. But at the same token, we use it to inform us. And when we want to do an audit on a client, we charge for that. Typically, we're charging on top of the managed service deal. If you wanted to mix it into the managed service deal, that's fine too. Just make sure you have the right add-on. But for us, we don't even like to make that fixed cost. We like to make it block time because we don't know what we're going to get into. And so it's just, we have a fixed cost client and then these blocks for security things that happen. So that's just kind of a different approach, but we do deploy it everywhere. Like Steve says as well, it is something that our customers have to have. But we've also found many ways to monetize it on top of that, I guess is probably another way of putting it.
And this is Larry.
Larry,
can I interrupt real quick? I guess the biggest question for us is trying to figure out how to cost the labor factor into it, right? So at the different, how much time is it going to take if we just include it in our services as part of the service, right?
So Larry, that's exactly what I'm trying to express, that I struggle with the same things. Like, look, it's unpredictable. And so I'm unwilling to fix cost it. That's why I say, look, buy a block of hours and we'll mix it into your block of hours you have for your auditing that's top of your regular managed services. And if you need more, you're going to have to pay for more. And so we just don't fix cost it. I think you can, but it's super unpredictable. And so, that's why we use it when it advantages us. When it helps us do something more efficient, it's better for everybody. That helps our fixed cost activities go down. But anytime we're actually working on a remediation or something like that, it's a project or it goes against a block of security hours that have been sold.
Perfect.
Yeah, very, very cool. Okay.
I'm going to throw out one other comment on that, Carl. What you're saying makes perfect sense. What we're doing on a monthly basis is identifying the hours in the different task buckets that we use. And therefore then we evaluate that on a month-to-month basis with the client and say, what are they consuming? And those that are consuming more, we're going to bump up. It's in our agreement that we bump up their fixed term agreement. Just for Larry, if you go to a client and say, I want to replace your IT guys, they're gonna have to work harder some months and they don't get paid for that. And we have to try to figure out how to do that so we can replace an internal IT guy without giving them that unexpected cost. And our customers seem to like that. So
yeah, I think that's a great way to go. It's all about trying to figure out not giving away time and the fundamental lack of predictability that can happen with something like this. And so, it is a fine line to walk, and it's not that obvious. I think, almost if you just pick a lane and go and talk to your customers about it, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah.
So I know we're at the top of the hour. I think that was awesome. I think we continue this, Carl. I want to do a webinar, ideally with you, Tim, and we've talked about this on vulnerability management. You guys all okay if I kind of circulate Doodle, and let's get that underway. I promised this to Larry for only about, I don't know, 6 months. But now that we finally have the one-time assessment and everything working in V2, I think we're in a good position to do this. Is that good? I'm going to take that. Tim.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Shiva, we're going to wrap it up here. I think we hit in the mid 90s. So that was a record. Want to say thank you for everybody that attended. Fantastic call. I'm sure there's questions that were unanswered. If there are, support at CyberCNS. If you have any issues and need help, CyberCNS. I see some people still posting in Slack. It's fine to collaborate in Slack. I have no problem with that. But if you need help, please support at CyberCNS. Shiva, any closing comments?
Just wanted to say thanks to everyone, and basically it was an awesome call today. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
great work,
fantastic.
Shiva. Some great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to you and the team. Send our best to everybody. Thanks to everybody. Have a fantastic week, and we'll look forward to seeing you this time next week. Take care, everybody.